Okay, everyone. My name's Natalie Wigman. I'm Director at Eastleigh Borough Council and I'm a member of Future South. And I'm just the chair for this panel. I'm by no means an expert, and hopefully I'm surrounded by some brilliant people here who will be able to give you some answers to your questions and also talk about the opportunities to business. So I will get them to introduce themselves one at a time, and I'll start with Don as he's the first on my screen. Don, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can.
Okay. David asked me to share a couple of slides as I introduce myself. Let me see if I can do that. If not, he said he would be able to do it, and it doesn't look like I can do it. So maybe I will just cancel that. Let me just explain. So like Natalie, I've been with Future South virtually from the beginning, and we've done as David has said, and as Ben has said, we've done a tremendous number of things to bring about green over the last 10 years. My area is, I've been an entrepreneur. I've set up a number of companies over the years, but my real world is to bring innovation from the research labs to the commercialization. And that really fits into what I think this panelist we're going to be talking about, which is that one of the things that's come up, particularly over the last few months, is that there's no silver bullet that's going to solve all of our problems. It's going to take a huge number of different things to do that, not the least of which is a lot of habit changes that all of us across the world are going to have to do. On the other hand, even if we do all of that, the estimation is that we are nowhere close to being able to accomplish what our objectives are. The things that have come up multiple times is that half of the stuff that we are going to have to do to reach our zero net objectives have not been invented yet, okay? Which says that over the next couple of, next few decades, we have got to invent. And maybe, Dave, thanks for bringing it up. If you can move on to a couple of more slides ahead. Yeah, so Gates in his book that was published earlier this year talked about the fact of where do the greenhouse gas emissions come from? And I think this really does show that it is spread across a very large number of the things that we do, which again highlights the fact that we have a long ways to go to get there. Go to the next one. And these are 3 reports that I just pulled down that have been published within the last couple of months. One from UKRI, their Energy Systems Catapult, another one from the International Energy Agency, and recently, I think about 3 weeks ago, the CBI put out. One of the things that is common in all of these reports is that we need new technologies. We need technologies that don't exist as products and services today, and we've got to do this through innovation. Next one, David. I think that is. On Andrew Marr, this was actually just a month ago. John Kerry was on there. He's the designated green tech person within the U.S., and he said that over half of the stuff that we're going to have to get there has not been invented yet. So I think these are the key things, is that in terms of our ambitions and what we can do, there's a huge amount of both development as well as commercialization that is going to be needed to move forward to get there. And hit the last slide, because I think it kind of sets the stage for some of the stuff, David, is that COVID has had a positive side for us in that the CO2 emissions anyway have dropped by 7% during the COVID on a worldwide basis, which has given us a start. And I think the real question is, can we, as opposed to ricochet back to where we had been going up, can we use this start to get moving faster? And I think that's where a huge amount of innovation is going to be needed, and a lot of commercialization that will have to take place in the next couple of decades. That's me. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you very much, Don. And I will move on to the next person on my screen now, which is Jason Light. Introduce yourself, Jason.
Oh, am I on the screen, or I've got
your slides are?
Oh, right. I haven't got any slides, so hopefully you can see me.
Oh, okay.
Oh, bouncing around. So I'm Jason Light. I'm the head of sustainability and energy at University Southampton Hospital NHS Foundation Trust. I've probably got the words in the wrong order, but I've been working in local government for 20 years, predominantly on environmental management, and the last sort of just under 3 months working in the NHS, which is, I think, the sort of very kind of embodiment of what Future South is kind of looking at. We're a public sector organisation with educational establishments within us. We've got separate business subsidiaries, but also we are looking at intergenerational. Everything we do is the start of generations, and supporting people, and then sadly the end of generations. So if you're looking at things like climate and sustainability and intergenerational justice, it's the very core of what we do. And I'm really pleased to be sort of brought into an organisation where there may be a bit early on that journey, but the commitment's there. And today's quite a really optimistic day for me. Really, I have to dip out this afternoon. We've got our first ever sustainability board, chaired by our chief medical officer, with representation from the Director of Public Health from Southampton, who's taken some time out to speak to us. And we're starting to really ramp things up. So I'm really kind of optimistic about what we can do. The NHS itself is sort of estimated to be between kind of 4 and 5% of the carbon footprint of the UK. Like most organisations, we've got net zero targets. That nationally there's a 2040 target for direct and 2045 for indirect. The 2040 target doesn't scare me too much. The 2045 does, when we start to look at the procurement, and that's probably 90% of everything that's within my footprint of my organisation. And I think being in the South Coast and the home of the circular economy, I feel kind of optimistic that there's a lot we can do there, and we're already starting to do that, where we're sort of changing our procurement practices and things. So I think there's a lot to learn from what's going on elsewhere, but even just looking at those kind of procurement challenges we have, we've shifting from curtains that you throw away when they get a bit of material on them, to put it nicely, to washable ones, using reusable sharps bins rather than incinerating everything altogether. We're starting to see this process where we're taking a more circular approach to how we manage things. So I think that's a really positive from our region, and I think one of the speakers coming up in this session will talk a bit more about circular economy. I think the overall, I'm feeling quite optimistic, or maybe not optimistic, realistic, but with a dash of optimism. I think David touched upon some sort of not particularly pleasant stats and issues. But if you look at the public attitudes, there's like 4% of the public aren't concerned about climate. I think the last assessment there was in May, there was kind of 89% of the population have seen it on their local area. So there's the understanding of this is ramping up, and I think it's going to only ramp up more in the next few months as we head towards COP. And I think it's kind of looking at how we kind of manage that. And I don't know if anyone's read Solitaire Townsend's Happy Hero book, but it's a kind of in a kind of a scary world, and doing that through positive action. And certainly everything that we all do will hopefully kind of help ourselves through that. So I'm feeling quite quite positive around that side, and I think the commitments being made by all of the NHS bodies in the sort of South region. I'm engaged with all of them. We're all collaborating, and we're some of the biggest employers, and possibly the biggest employer in Southampton is my organisation. So, and I think there's some big things happening. It's really, really positive.
Jennie, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you, Natalie. Hi, my name is Jennie Pell. I work for the Enterprise in 3 Local Enterprise Partnership. So for those that don't know, we cover sort of mid to northern Hampshire and western Surrey. And my job is a clean growth lead within the LEP. So that entails sort of trying to embed a clean growth approach in everything we do, whether that's our transport skills, etc., and also working with our growth hub, who are business advisors, working with companies in the area. And actually, I thought I'd start with a slightly positive kind of story on this, because we were reflecting yesterday that probably 2 or 3 years ago, my role would not have even existed within the LEP. So actually, you know, the momentum that's sort of being carried along to have someone within the LEP sort of leading on this work and this business engagement is actually really positive. And we've got to a point now within the LEP that every decision we make is a clean growth decision. So we take into account sort of all those factors before we make decisions. And I think now really is that moment with COP26 this year, and this hopefully today this will kind of, you know, will come through to really grasp those opportunities actually for businesses. So the other bit, you know, ourselves, other business support organisations, really showing the opportunity of the innovation that businesses can either who are already working in the sector, but also that can diversify into the sector, is a massive opportunity, as well as a challenge, obviously, and also inspiring those businesses to decarbonise their own operations as well. So we can, you know, work with people to help make those changes. And I think linking into sort of the government activities on COP26 and the green zones and the battle bus, etc., is a real, we can kind of jump on that sort of media and the publicity that will go with it, to really sort of provide practical advice and support to people that may be interested in this or don't know where to start, as well as really supporting our sectors. We know in the EM3 area, we're a design-led economy, but actually we have a lot of businesses working within the low carbon sector, and specialisms around the sort of the design end of some of this stuff around wind turbines, but the design of those things rather than the kind of construction. And actually we can use this to really support those sectors going forward to help deliver the solutions that Don was talking about previously, things that don't already exist. And at the same time, it can be inspirational, I think, for the green skills agenda, and inspiring people to know that, you know, if we're going to make all these changes, we're going to need a lot of people trained in different areas in order to achieve these net zero targets. So I'm really excited by it, but that's tempered with kind of moments of panic, I have to say, at times. Thank you.
Jennie. Reniera, can we hear from you now?
Hi, thank you, Natalie. Yes, so I'm Reniera and I work at the MacArthur Foundation. So I'm the circular economy person that Jason was referring to earlier. So my role at the foundation is in education. So I lead the program that we do, all the work that we do with schools, colleges and universities around the world. But I thought it would be really useful just to touch a little bit about what we do. We're based on Cowes on the Isle of Wight, and show a little bit around the global reach that we have from our little headquarters based on the Medina River on the Isle of Wight. So just in case you don't know who we are, we've been around for 10 years, established by Dame Ellen MacArthur when she left professional sailing. And essentially we have one clear mission, and that's really to accelerate the transition to a circular economy globally. Just in case, and as a reminder, circular economy is a systems solutions approach. It tackles global challenges such as biodiversity loss, climate change, and many other challenges that we have. So it's an economy that really talks about eliminating waste and pollution through design, innovative materials, and innovative new business models. It keeps those products and materials in use. It decouples growth from natural resources, and really crucially, it regenerates natural systems. And I think we like to talk about it as a really positive solution to do better in a space where often the current narrative, and I've heard words today like panic and crisis, the current narrative is often about doing less bad, and the circular economy is really about how do we move into an economy that actually does better and leaves the planet in a better space than we are. So we do three things. We develop and promote the idea of the circular economy. We engage and inspire key actors in the system, and we mobilize system solutions at scale. And we do all of this, like I said, from our headquarters in Cowes. And as an organization, over the last couple of years, we've grown from one that started with 4 people and a dog, literally, to now 180 strong workforce, the majority of whom are based here on the island. But we also have offices in Beijing, Sao Paulo, New York, Brussels, and staff based in London. And I think similarly to the way that the LEP works and what David was mentioning earlier today, I mean, we work with industry, we work with governments and cities, and we work with academia. And we've built a network across the globe, which includes some of the world's largest organizations and key cities. So, for example, London, Sao Paulo, and New York have all just recently signed up to become strategic partners and are really committed to turning their cities into circular cities. We work with Coca-Cola, H&M, IKEA, hundreds of other organizations who globally are really committing to changing the way that they operate and moving to a different business model. So we focus on industry, governments and institutions. We also focus on academia, and the University of Portsmouth is one of our key members. And we have this trilogy because if you want to shift an economy, you've got to move industry. Industry can only move as fast as legislation and policy framework allows. So we need to make sure that governments, policymakers and institutions are involved in the conversation. And then even when we do make that change, if we don't have people with the right skills and knowledge and competencies, how on earth are we going to apply a new new economy at scale? So, I mean, we tend to concentrate our work at systems level change rather than focusing on consumer behavior, a bit like what I was saying just now around industry can only move as fast as legislation and strategic frameworks allow. Consumers can only change their behaviors within a system that offers them a choice. And at the moment, because we're still predominantly in this linear economy where we take stuff out of the stuff with it and we throw it away, trying to always work with consumer behavior can be really challenging. So our view is that we work at systems level, trying to get the businesses, etc., to change the way that entire systems work. And I think if anybody keeps track of us, we've had real global traction in a number of different areas. 2 notable ones would be the jeans redesign program in working with players within the denim industry, so from cotton growers all the way through to top designers, in looking at the way jeans can be redesigned so that actually the majority of the product can be remanufactured and it can be reused over and over and over again. We've also had really great success in plastics. We've got a number of international plastic pacts that have been set up by countries, and we are really moving towards a goal of a global plastics pact, which feels quite within our grasp over the next couple of years, where globally some decisions will be made to move the plastics economy out of where it is today, which is extraction-led and single use, into one that aligns with our new plastics economy vision. So everything that we do is underpinned by this need to design differently. We know that 80% of the environmental impact of products and services is created at the design stage. So if we can redesign products and services to lessen that impact, we're already partway there. Renewable energy is assumed, and we do a lot of work to undertake research and develop papers. We don't particularly focus on the Solent, and I will be upfront and clear about that. Our focus is definitely on key global cities because of the level of material flow, the level of people and businesses and etc. that are in those. But saying that, we, as the workforce has grown and we've had more people really interested in what we're doing more locally, we have supported the establishment of an Isle of Wight circular economy networking group, which we should broaden across the Solent. We encourage local businesses to engage with. We have tons of free resources. We have these incredible global training programs, And we try and showcase some really great examples from the region. So as I said, Portsmouth University, one of our member universities, and one of our favourite examples of a circular fashion business is based in Freshwater on the island, and that's Rapa Nui and their technology-based platform called Timo, which is a really a great example of the circular economy in action right from here in the Solent. So I guess I feel slightly like an imposter on this panel in that we don't focus solely on the Solent, but I think there are real opportunities for business, local governments, the LEP, the great universities that we have in this region in the south, to really get behind this positive framework and really learn from the way some of the larger businesses and industries and governments across the world are starting to make some changes. And there's a really positive narrative, and I think, I really think people need that positive narrative and not always the shouting at the problem. And I will stop there.
Thank you very much. And as luck would have it, the bin men have turned up just as I needed to introduce the next person. So I apologise if anyone can hear them. You're absolutely not an imposter on this panel, Reniera. I could have listened to you all day. Absolutely fascinating. So hopefully, as we get some more questions in, we'll be able to hear from you again in a bit. And I'll pass over to Ross, please.
Thank you very much, Natalie. I'm Ross McNally. I'm the Executive Chair, Chief Executive at Hampshire Chamber of Commerce. We're doing a lot with stakeholders, many of whom I see on the call today, around specifically addressing, I think, the needs of SMEs. We've supported Future South and other stakeholders across the Solent for a number of years, and we recognise that it's probably the time has come that SMEs are really given a major engagement in this particular piece. And it's not that they don't want to be. The fact of the matter is over 70%, particularly post-COVID, over 70% of SMEs are saying that they want to take actions to minimise their environmental impact. They don't necessarily know how to do this, and this is really where the help comes into play. Post-COVID and Brexit, the fact is that all businesses are looking at improving their footprint. They're looking at digitization, they're looking at the energy that they are using, they're looking at their production processes. In particular, they're looking for skills, and they want to quite simply run things like low carbon offices, have low carbon supplier and distribution arrangements, and provide the kind of flexible working that feeds into that particular piece. All of that is being stated, and with SMEs representing 85% of businesses, we really do need to take them on this particular journey. So their demand there is perhaps ahead of the market for the solutions that they can easily find for themselves. And so as a Chamber of Commerce, working with the LEPs and working with other stakeholders, we are bringing stakeholders and SME businesses together to say, how do we address this? And it's not like there hasn't been, well, actually decades of effective work to really address some of these issues. But the challenges are still out there for SMEs in particular. And the first answer for them, and always as they shout from the rooftops, is communications, communications, communications. They are saying they wish they knew where the answers were. They wish they knew where the help was. They wish they knew what to do. And a lot of that is out there, but it just needs to have an improved communications piece. Also, they're questioning the market impact, the value of a green offer. Now, I don't think that they really mean that. I'm fairly sure that they say they want to mainstream it. They want it to be really the solution. And that's what we need to do, is help them towards that journey so that they recognise that actually all of our markets are going to be clean in the future, and therefore this is a no-brainer. They do need regulation. Reniera is absolutely right. The only way that the real change is going to make, because they're not in the position to change the world around them, they need the world to be changed around them so that they can benefit from that new environment. And so they do need the effective regulation such that the choices they're making in supplies and the choices that they're making in terms of the relationships that they have in business means that they are automatically moving towards clean growth areas. And fundamentally, they're looking for people with skills that know more than they do. I mean, there's a generation thing in all of this as well. The young people coming through are now seeing this as a matter of insistence, as a matter of choice when it comes to where they work. They want to work for companies that have this commitment. These businesses want to have this commitment. They share that commitment. They just want to be able to live up and make it a reality. So in a way, the COVID situation, if there can be any good that comes out of this terrible situation, but if the one thing is that it's allowed businesses to rethink and to pivot. So what can we do? Well, as we formed a committee. No, I'm joking. At the end of the day, we don't need another group. What we do need is the groups coming together. And so very many of the stakeholders with a common purpose, recognizing that all these businesses are saying is, how do I thread my way through these particular very important services and projects that are out there? How can I get the kind of information? So we have acted as a host, if you like, to bring those stakeholders together and to bring them together with SMEs. And basically it's to address things like green innovation. How can we accelerate that? The John Kerry piece, how can we make sure that at all levels, whatever size of business, these changes are being made? Also simple, accessible top tips, case studies, advice. People are motivated by seeing others doing well, and so they want to see the success of other businesses. Asking these SMEs what they really need to make that change. So, that dialogue on an ongoing basis. Threading all business planning through, not with a green tint or green washover, but absolutely clean growth being at the heart of their business planning. All projects coming together, so there's sort of no wrong door. Any one of us as stakeholders, and particularly the business networks, the FSBs and the chambers of commerce, IODs and others, should be organising their projects and their activities so that we are referring to each other. So there's genuinely a no wrong door. And that finally, as somebody who sort of comes through on a policy framework as a chamber of commerce, we've got to represent the voice of those businesses. If that regulation is going to change to be a positive good, to enable those 70% of businesses that want to make that change and transform their business, they want an effective regulatory framework around it. And we need to represent the voice of business into all channels, and that's globally these days. It can't just be what the UK decides, but globally to influence what SMEs really need to make that change. And we make that commitment to do it. So basically, yes, it is. It's clean business for all. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, Ross. And then lastly, I'll pass over to Susie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. Nice to be part of the panel. So I'm Susie Thompson. I've been a Future South board member, I'm going to say 3 years, maybe 2.5, 3 years. But I'm also owner and director of an SME in the region, Earth to Ocean, and we're a sustainability consultancy that really helps clients deliver robust sustainability strategies. And I'm very pleased to say that carbon is in increasing focus on those strategies, and our main focus is through sport and using sport as that platform to really drive change and engage and inspire. Now, in the region, there's loads of great initiatives and stuff going on. There's, of course, more that can be done and we can do, and we can, set the pace. But I've worked with and helped implement sustainability strategies for Ben Ainsley Racing, and we worked in looking at recycling of carbon fibre and composites, and worked with universities. Southampton and Portsmouth were both involved in those projects to really look at how we could create circularity around the composites industry. And using the platform of the sport and the event and the profile of the event to really get people engaged and drive and kind of accelerate, if you like. So I see very much these opportunities as kind of accelerators of change. I currently carrying on working with SailGP as an international sailing league, and in 2019, that was their first season, and one of their events was based out of Cowes. So that was a big event, and we've been really embedding sustainability into the core of how that league is run. Goodwood as well, Goodwood International focus as well, you know, world renowned, legendary Festival of Speed and things. So help them with their overall sustainability strategy. And interesting, they're very much looking at how they can look at the land management and that become the kind of circular approach to balancing out the carbon emissions of the events and the other operations there. So an interesting circular approach there. But I also work wider with other sports. In the UK, Liverpool Football Club on this road, and a lot of the football clubs now are starting to gain momentum, which is a huge platform to engage both public and that mass supply chain through there. But even higher level in terms of international federations, World Athletics, World Sailing, have these big overarching governance bodies of sport are all taking on sustainability, setting themselves carbon targets and really looking at how that rolls down to their member federations, their world championships, and down to the grassroots levels of their sport. So for the last 20 years, I've been working using the power of sport to engage and drive change. Now, I didn't really dream up the idea of sport as a platform for change. And Nelson Mandela has got some famous words, and there's a fantastic quote from him about sport has the power to change the world. And that's really what drives me and what I want to keep doing. And we've got a great opportunity for that in the South. And if I just go back to what we've done with the SailGP Sailing League, first having helped them set up the strategy, you continually can challenge the approach and push them. They're very focused on the racing and the sailing, and that's the main part of it. But we've pushed them enough. And during COVID, it was an opportunity for them. They're obviously very early startup, was to say, actually, what are we about? Is it just about racing? Is it just about sailing? And actually, it was an opportunity for them to really rethink and say, actually, no, do you know what? We need to create a better sport. We need to create a better planet at the same time. And sports like sailing, so attached to the environment, it's a natural, and the fact that it's powered by the wind, so the really easy connection with clean energy. Actually, we've got an opportunity. And the conversations I'm having with football is like, we have to use the platform that we've got. We've got a responsibility to use this platform to really drive to this better planet, this better world that we can get to. So with SailGP, we set a target to become carbon neutral by 2025. And the beauty of sport is they always want to do it quicker or better or be the first. So it was like, well, why can't we do that now? It's like, well, we could. It's like, well, why just carbon neutral? Why not do something positive for the planet? We should be climate positive. So we became one of the first climate positive sports, first in sailing, and achieved the international carbon neutral standard. And we've recently become part of the UN's Climate Neutral Now initiative. And they now grade you in gold medals across measure, reduce, offset components of your carbon strategy. And we've got 3 gold medals across there. It's probably the only gold medals I've got. But if you work in sailing or work in sport and things, then getting any gold medal is quite exciting. So, and that also enables us to become part of this UN's Race to Zero campaign. So there are initiatives that we can start looking at and building on, and like Ross just said, not maybe inventing a new thing, but actually we can utilize stuff that's there. Now, as an SME in the region, my company's climate positive. I need to walk the walk if that's what I'm doing. It wasn't that difficult to do, you know. Okay, I'm very small, it's my world, it's what I do, but actually it would be great to see other SMEs doing that, because if every supplier took responsibility, if every part of that supply chain network took that responsibility, then we'll really see and we'll really be able to drive that change. And, you know, we need to go faster. We can't wait till, certainly for the small businesses, we don't need to wait for 2030, 2040. We can actually say, hey, hold on, let's have a look, let's take stock now. What bits can we do? Create that roadmap. And I guess ultimately, and I've talked with, you know, we've talked within Future South of a vision of actually a circular carbon approach within the region, where we've got businesses that are thriving in a low carbon economic developed way, but they're thriving, they're providing services and products as well in that circular economy approach that we've heard being discussed. But actually we're also investing in our natural environment, both land and marine, because that's a massive part and opportunity of what we've got that creates not just an amazing place to live, but it also absorbs the carbon that we're emitting. So actually you know, with our national parks, our European marine sites, it is a very special place to live. That came in the video that David showed right at the beginning. Can we create that circular approach within our region and actually be investing in creating an even better place for us to live? But actually, that is part of our carbon journey. So that's my story.
Thank you very much, Susie. Well, we've heard from all the panel now, and I'm very pleased to say that there are some questions that have come through, so I haven't got to try and think of them all myself, so it's a big relief to me. I'm going to start with the one that's got the most votes. I toyed with not starting with this one because it's actually quite a challenging question, but I think as people have shown support to this one, I think it's the right one to start with. So this is a question asked by Ben Earl. And it says, can we outline as part of the panel at least 5 asks of the COP26 process to support businesses in the transition to net zero? Could we also commit to 5 actions of things that we are going to do? So to start with, I thought I would hand over to Ross to answer the first part of the question around the things that businesses might be looking for in terms of support. And then after that, obviously, anybody else can dive in before I ask if you have any personal commitments for your own organisations that you think we could do, or what we could do as a panel for Future South. Ross, are you able to start?
Absolutely. I may not get to 5, Natalie, but I'll throw some into play. The first thing actually is the macro. It's the big thing. If we can see genuine commitment from the powers that be to make the change globally that we expect, and that the funding, the finance, the organisation is put behind that to make that a reality, then you will be bringing along the whole of the economy and the whole of industry with you. So really it's about leadership. That'd be my first ask. And it's because we've probably seen, I mean, number 26, but we've probably seen a lot of talk from leaders around the world. And if they want to bring businesses along with them, they've got to show that leadership. They've got to show that they, as governments, are committed genuinely to make the transformation in their economies. If they did that, then that would set the scene for others. Specifically in terms of smaller businesses, probably a couple of those is very, very practical. One, and I think it was touched upon by Susie also, is that we need to ensure that the whole of the value chain, within that, you're capable of making the right kind of choices. And that basically means that we've got to see government engaging with large businesses so that that can then engage with smaller businesses right through the whole of the system, such that the SMEs in particular are able to make no-brainer choices. Because the thing is that SMEs and micro businesses, they more act like consumers in this piece than they do in the producers of the solutions. They are sitting within an economic environment, within a system, within a structure, and they are very willing and able to make the transformations that are needed if they're contracted to do so, and if there is an economic imperative for that to happen. But that comes from governments, the larger businesses that are at the heads of these value chains, to make those kind of changes and make them within a time scale that covers up and removes the excuses and the long-held delays that are always in place. So that's the second thing, is if they go to the head, then the rest of the body will follow. And the third thing is that there needs to be support. Now, all transformations involve a degree of support, and it comes in two ways. One is skills coming through the system that are actually employable, that can help these smaller organizations to make those transformations. Entrepreneurs are very often, by their very nature, not the people who are coming through and bringing in those employable skills. They're the drivers of change, and they're happy to make that change, but they want to bring in skilled people that can really do that. So at every part of education, this should be playing a central role. And then the businesses should have, it's not an investors in people type of thing. We don't want another badge. We genuinely want businesses to be given the guidance and the steering and the planning and the strategies, the sort of things that Future South has been doing a long time, but tool up to the point where every business is able to make this part of their funding goals, and actually have the funding coming in place with government support to make that a reality. We're not that far away from a transformation, irrespective of John Kerry's statements about 50% of all technology not yet invented. As Susie has said, businesses can make a transformation. They just need that hand to get there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who has anything to add on what we can do to support businesses at this time with this work?
Yeah, I was just going to add in one ask, actually, probably around consistency of whether that's funding programs or policy from government, so that whether that's stimulating a sort of area around the retrofit, for example, to give confidence to the supply chain to invest and SMEs to invest. So not just forgetting, we've got this great momentum. We make sure there's sort of longer term programs that kind of provide that certainty and commitment, so that people can confidently engage in it.
Thank you.
I can add something, Natalie, on that as well. Oh yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's making, how do you engage the SMEs? I think it's making it relevant, and typically an SME is, busy juggling so many balls that time is precious, and investment is sometimes, it has to be immediate into the, what's seen as the more economic side, and creating a carbon strategy or a different type of approach. Circular economy thinking may be seen as like an investment that they just haven't got. Their timescale is much more short term. But I do think that helping create that business case and that rationale, and helping them see that actually this is what you'll need in the future to future-proof yourself as a business. When I'm seeing it in requests for proposals and things like that, that you have to evidence your your sustainability credentials and your carbon credentials and things. And if we can help SMEs get on that first, then we'll only stimulate the local economy. So it's definitely changing faster than it's definitely changing, and reasonably fast now. So I think it's great.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, I think, on the kind of local side, I think we talked about skills and things, and I mentioned we've got education within our organisation, and we're kind of starting to embed that within our apprenticeship schemes and things. I guess there's sort of little things that organisations can do, and there's quite big things. And my wife's just bought a business, and we're going through the B Corp process, which, if anyone's kind of looked into, is absolutely fab. You can do in a self-assessment, and it will look at everything around sustainability, how you treat people, how you treat the environment. I couldn't recommend that more as a process. And I think something that's quite interesting, there's this sort of false sort of view that people have about business and the legal structure in the UK, that it's all about shareholder bottom line, whereas actually the legislation was changed years ago that you should be looking beyond that, and social value should be part of procurement processes, but also what businesses are supposed to be looking at. And I think it's quite interesting going through the B Corp process. We had to change the actual formal models of association for the business to include a statement to say that the business was going to be focusing on the environment, and there's an imperative to the directors. And I think that links up a bit to what should be coming out of COP, that that shouldn't be a voluntary thing. That should be what all businesses have within their requirements. So it's not just they're allowed to do it, and it's part of the Finance Act. I can't remember the act when it went through. It was sort of 2000, but that would be good to kind of have that. Thinking about the kind of wider stuff that Ben's put in the question about what I'd like to see from COP. I can say this because I'm not politically restricted anymore, but I'm pretty sick of responding to government consultations that lead to absolutely nothing. And I'm pretty livid, actually, as to where we're at with the Environment Bill, which the amount of times there's been wonderful speeches about how great that's going to be, and we're over a year past leaving Europe, and we still don't have an environment bill that provides the protections that should be there for this country and the ecosystems and waste and everything. So if we get to COP and we still haven't got an environment bill that's watertight, has a proper regulatory body, it seems pretty pointless having COP. So I think that's something for us all to apply pressure and try and see, because that links through to everything. The environment, we talked a bit about productivity and GDP and things, and some of the targets for the environment bill are shifting away from that, and the waste targets to look at productivity, which I think leads more into the circular approach to get more out of that resource use. They need to be legally binding and to be part of what every organisation is working towards. So I could probably list 50 things I want out of COP, but I would like to not have to respond to yet another consultation. I think there was one out this week. There was a few out last week. I remember when Gove was Environment Minister, I read an article that he'd published 72 consultations and done one absolutely minor piece of legislation change in several years, and yet he was lauded as this brilliant Environment Minister. So I think there's a lot of talk. Commitment.
Thanks, Jason. So to summarise, we want less consultations and more legislation. We want things to actually happen. Reniera, you had your hand up.
Just thinking about sort of support to businesses in the region. Use the stuff that we have. I'm forever amazed at we have huge engagement from global businesses, but actually very little from the UK, and particularly very little from the Isle of Wight and the Solent region. We run massive training programs. We have fantastic case studies. We have circular procurement guides. We have a huge range of resources, and I think that businesses can use them. They can access them for free. We don't charge anything. So there's certainly something there about utilising the resources that we already have within the region. The other thing that I think is, somebody's put in one of the chats, in one of the comments, is like, just do something. Don't sit and pontificate about all the big things and how big this issue is. Actually, those small incremental steps that businesses can take that sometimes seem a bit silly, like, have a water cooler rather than that people can take their own glass and fill water rather than people bringing bottles of water. Encourage reuse of cutlery, and there's all sorts of small little steps that you can take. And I have this conversation so often with universities who are all on this agenda to get down towards kind of net zero, climate positive, etc. And they're all hung up on international student travel. How do you retrofit old buildings so that they are more energy efficient? These are huge issues. And I turn to them and I say, well, have you dealt with plastic straws in your canteen yet? Have you dealt with, are you having clothes swaps between your students? Do you use furniture reuse platforms? And I think we get so caught up in this idea that there's these huge things that we have to tackle that we forget that there are a number of small incremental steps that a lot of businesses can take that aren't going to cost the earth, that do mean that you can continue business as usual, but actually build the confidence of these businesses to engage in a circular, more sustainable, whatever language you want to use, conversation, and builds the business case for them internally. They become more kind of engaged with the agenda. So it was just like there are small incremental steps. It doesn't always have to be the enormous elephant in the room that everybody is struggling with.
Thank you. I think that's a really good point. There's really easy things that any organisation can do to start that process, that move towards zero carbon. So I think that's fantastic. The second part of the question was to outline kind of 5 actions that we're all going to take. Quite a hard thing to do because we're not a cohesive group. We can't kind of ask for answer for others. I don't know if there's anything particularly that anyone wants to raise as something that they'll take away and do within their own organisation from listening to others as part of this panel. Has anyone got any ideas? Jay?
I had one thought actually, which was linking back to COVID actually, and as an organisation, taking the benefits of COVID around, we have travelled much less as an organisation. We need to keep that going. We need to, the small things that Reniera was saying about, if we make those changes, we will, by virtue, then reduce our travel, reduce the demand on infrastructure, etc. So, we're quite keen to look at that, make sure we can do that. But I've been sort of scribbling down, and again, from Reniera's point of view, that might be working globally, but actually it really is, it hits home the resources we do have and the knowledge and expertise. So, our Growth Hub and Growth Champions, we're building up resources for them when they're talking to signpost people, and that will be one I will add in, is that, those bringing up the circular and sustainable economy, we have another contact now, so actually just really remembering that we have lots here, and that's what makes it a great place, that it is innovative and there is expertise already here.
Yes, just go, Ross.
Oh, thanks, Natalie. Just one thing, and it's actually because it's very pertinent right now to the Chamber of Commerce. As we move into, we're moving our offices, we're going to be relocating, and that provides a wonderful opportunity to operate in a different way. And so it makes me think that actually at every single turn, businesses, quite simply, whenever a contract of any sort comes up for renewal, they should be looking at the clean solutions around that. And it's a very simple thing to do, and step by step, you'll make, within a 5-7 year period, the transformation of your business if you just place those determining factors as to how you choose that supplier, that provider, that equipment, the place in which you operate. Then you're actually driving the change within the economy as well through your demand, through the demand mechanism. And so I think all businesses should, every time, and it can start tomorrow, that they're reviewing anything in terms of those contracts and relationships, go for the clean solution, and we might make the change a lot quicker.
Susie?
Yeah, I was maybe a bit controversial, because whilst straws are a great thing and we can all do our little things, we then think that we've done the right thing. And the reality is we've got to shift, we've got to change. And actually it goes to the world that Don's been talking about and sits in. We have to rethink the future. We have to tackle those big issues, and we have to take an approach that really focuses on what the big challenges are. Otherwise it's the elephant in the room and we're still not going to deal with it. And COVID has 7% reduction in carbon emissions. Traveling less is clearly not the solution yet, is it? It's part of it, but we absolutely have to identify what those big issues are. And for sport, 80% can be fan travel. We've got to rethink how you engage people in a way that just doesn't have that impact. It's easy to say it's not our problem, it's not, but it is. And we absolutely have to tackle that. And in the same way, universities or whoever, how are you going to get your students here in a low carbon way now in the future? What's your roadmap for that? And if that requires us driving and putting pressure on, those industries or those businesses, then we have to. And the innovations aren't there yet, but we're going to have to find them. And it's up to us to put the pressure on those businesses and help governments fund those new initiatives and the new inventions that are going to help us, innovations that are going to help us get to the future that we need. We can't pretend they're too big for us.
Good point. Yeah, it's not just the little things. To make real change, we do need to tackle the big issues. Don, are you looking to come in here?
Yeah, let me just say that it is all of these things. We have to do the little things, but in reality, if we're going to get to net zero, all the little things are not going to even eliminate everything. We have got to come up with the new technologies that are literally going to extract the existing greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere. We're going to have to come up with those type of groundbreaking type innovations that will literally reduce the amount, because CO2 doesn't go away. Luckily, methane, after several decades, does break down, but CO2 in the atmosphere doesn't. We have to come up with ways of how are we going to extract megatons of CO2 out of the atmosphere. We have to come up with those. But the lucky thing is that and this is, I know we're going to talk about finance later this afternoon, but the world finance organizations are now coming to realize that their future is based upon this too. So they are now putting substantial amounts of money to these types of challenges, to how do we do this? And I see it happening now in much greater amounts than I ever saw in the past, of venture capitalists, of other types of financing organizations, putting hundreds of millions into companies that hold the potential, not all of them are going to succeed, but hold the potential to accomplishing some of these quite major things. So it is, but it is, we have to do all of these things. We cannot just say, this will do it and take care of it. We've got to do everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last point on this one, Jason. Thanks.
I think, I mean, I talked about actions and not hot air, but actually, I think COP is an example of bringing together, leaders across the world, and we're all leaders. This, Future South, the Chamber, LEP, they're all ways of bringing people together. And, I work in the NHS now. I've engaged with all of my local areas very actively and nationally. If there's one thing to take away from all of us, we're all within our sectors, we've all got different connections, is to say, I can be a leader in that, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to proactively, even if it's just a small amount of my time, engage with your sector and talk to people, share what you've got, learn from them what you've got. And, if you spend the next 6 months being that, taking every opportunity to kind of engage with people and have discussions and learn what works and what doesn't work, I think we can see a lot happen. I've certainly seen that in my 3 months in the NHS. I've had all sorts of things we've managed to progress collaboratively and not kind of competing, but working together, and then embodying that on the way up to Glasgow, where hopefully the countries will start to work together.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to another question now. And I suppose this is the big one, really. Is it just an either or? Can we really have continued economic growth at little or no cost to the environment and society? And I suppose this is the thing we all need to know. Is it possible, just by the nature of economic growth, is it possible to get to net zero carbon? So anyone like to come in first on this? Oh, a schedule now. Don, thank you.
It isn't an either or. It's what I said a while ago. We have to do everything. We have to do conservation. We have to do stuff. But I think that we realize that the society has come to a point we're not going to regress, okay? Society is not going to accept regressing back from the type of lifestyles that we have today. So that's where we have to change our patterns to be as economical with the things that we do, but we also have to find new technologies that will literally compensate and extract the problems that we are generating, because we will continue to generate. They talk about stop oil exploration. There's going to be huge amounts of petrochemicals used for centuries to come. So some of it, we've got to be better at and more efficient at our use of those, but we can't eliminate them. We're going to need them. And we've got to have ways that we can then compensate for them by extracting as well as putting things in. I think it's all of these things. It is a hugely complex problem.
Thanks, Don. Jennie, you were going to say something.
Oh, as I knew that question would come up. It's the big one, isn't it? Kind of, and from us, something I've kind of thought about. And I would, yes, I think actually, if you look at the way businesses can change to become more efficient, can look at different ways of doing things, as well as just that transition to a low carbon economy, to actually, investing in the skills for people to work in these sectors, then I would like to think that actually, yes, it is possible, but it's a lot of thought, and it's a lot of whether that's place-based planning and looking at our resources and really, putting that into the decision making. As Don said, it's lots of everything really, through embedding it in everything and every decision we make. So I would like to say it is, because yes, my role particularly, but it is a very big, it's a challenge, but it is exciting.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Jason, you wanted to come in.
So I don't know why I can't hear Jennie for some reason. I think I'd sort of question the question first. Our whole entire economy, even if it's oil based, is based on a product that's the product of the sun, and it's the whole entire economy is based on the environment, regardless of how you kind of look at it. And I think quite often it's seen as an either or situation, and actually, you can't run a business if people can't breathe. So I think there's a kind of question there, and if you actually take that seriously, then it's a finite resource. We only have one planet, and it's how you measure that economic growth. I mean, it is. I think I read something once. I don't know if it's true that the term economy comes from ecology. Because of that connection. And if we went back to that sense and actually looked at the well-being as a measure of environmental and social well-being as maybe a measure of success, and then we can grow, and we can probably exponentially grow, but we certainly can't do it from an extractive measurement sense of it. So I think it requires a shift in how you kind of measure that. But the kind of the GDP and no.
Thank you. And Reniera, I'm hoping you might have the magic answer to this.
No magic answers, but I think, the circular economy, we do talk about continued growth, but it being completely decoupled from finite resources. So actually, we get a lot of kind of questions like this. Shouldn't it all be around, lower populations, economic growth not as the way we see it, degrowth, etc. And actually, I think our stance on this is that if you can decouple your growth, and I agree with Jason, is how we measure that potentially needs changing. But if you can decouple that from the current extractive model that we have, then there doesn't seem to be any reason why we couldn't grow. And I'm not saying it's easy, and we've got a long way to go. And as everybody said, we still need more technologies, we need new business models, we need new skills, a whole heap of stuff. But it's about that. How do we separate that conversation? How do we move the growth piece away from the idea that it's based on just taking and using finite resources?
Thank you. Okay, I will move on to another one then. There seems to be a real groundswell with businesses engaging with the COP26 commitment to race to net zero. Is this something we're seeing in our region? And if we are, how can we make the most of that? Do we think we're seeing it locally? Can anyone answer that part of the question? Oh, go on, someone. Thanks, John.
I think we are seeing it, and part of what we're seeing in this first panel, and we're going to see it in some of the other panels as we go through the day, is that there are lots of people, and there are lots of people doing it, and many of them we don't know about. I mean, an example, I didn't know about Reniera's operation out on the Isle of Wight until this morning, to be honest. And these are the types of things I did know about. The Rapanuni fashion deal out on the Isle of Wight for some time. And I think, it's all of these things that we've got to continually integrate together and find ways of accelerating the good things, de-accelerating some of the bad things, and finding new things. It is all of these things that we have to keep doing.
Thank you, Ross.
Thanks so much, Natalie. I think it kind of joins the two questions, the previous one and this one together. It is all about changing need or changing demand. We are all part of the solution and part of the problem. And if you look at the businesses that are out there, they want to pivot their businesses to where that changing demand is going. And so if we as consumers, and if businesses in the supply chains in those roles make those kinds of decisions, then everything will start to shift. And we're seeing this from businesses. Businesses are talking about this change, and the change being related, therefore, to clean growth and to their new environmental commitments. And so, yes, the answer is yes, businesses are talking about this, but it also comes directly into play into changing the perception of what progress looks like in the future. What will be valued in the mid part of this century compared to the very consumer and transactional values that are placed in the middle part of the last century? What is that shift, and how will businesses address that as an opportunity? And so I think the two go hand in hand. I think that genuinely drives towards businesses providing solutions that are not going to have the impact, but can still create progress, but it might not be on the consumer or transactional economic models that we're used to. And if it doesn't, then businesses have got to adapt and change to that. And I know businesses are talking about that a lot. And it's as if this COVID-19 situation has allowed them to step back, rethink, and move forward again. And that is quite a positive. And so all of these things are coming into play at the same time. But yes, absolutely, businesses are discussing it.
I think it is the agenda. I mean, we've done a very small piece of work that has started to map the businesses on the island, just on the island, that we know that are already operating in a circular way. And actually, that list is a shed load longer than what I thought it would be when I started doing that piece of work. And I think there is something about how do we encourage these businesses to do more, to talk collectively and support each other, particularly the smaller businesses that don't have the resources that the larger ones do. But I mean, I think we've been quite amazed at how many businesses are either establishing themselves from day one, new businesses particularly that have sprung up during COVID-19, with the ethos of leaving the planet in a better place than they found it, or that are starting to really shift their business models, their products and materials that they use to be more in line with kind of what we talk about in the circular economy. So I think there is certainly on our little part of the Solent over here, it's very definitely part of the conversation. And I know even some of our bigger organizations like Vestas, the wind turbines, there's a huge amount of research that's going on in how you deal with composites, being led by Leeds University, but even MHI Vestas are engaged in it. So I think definitely there is work being done, but it's probably just not a cohesive conversation at the moment. So it's very fragmented, and some of it's under net zero, some of it's under climate change, some of it's under circular economy, some of it's under sustainability, and it's quite a fragmented language around it. But I do think there are hugely positive steps being made, certainly from what I see on the island.